There we go. We're on. Cool. All right, guys. So welcome to the Tekin How-To Clinic. We're here at Traction Raceway. There's been a nice enough to let us host this here. Free of charge. Everyone gets free track day to day. It'll be kind of nice. I'll be here all day, helping you test and tune, speedo settings, radio settings, even suspension setup. Damn, son. So I'm here basically at your disposal. So we've got Kyle here as well, one of our local team drivers. He's here to help you as well if I can't help you at the same time, but we'll sort it out right now. Luckily, we've got a pretty smaller group than normal, which is kind of nice. So you'll be able to get a lot more attention this time. So basically, we're going to cover data logging and all the new features of the Gen 2 speed controllers, which have been out for a while now, thankfully. So hopefully some of you guys are familiar with them. Some of the new stuff on the Gen 2 stuff. Out of the box, they're ready to race. What's nice about that is you don't need a computer or an Android phone to get these things going. They have 5 default timing profiles, including roar spec mode, as well as boosted setups. RS Gen 2 spec, that's a spec-only controller. There's no boost in that one, so it's kind of nice. It's budget price, dropped-in, race-ready speed controller. And the RX-8, of course, just doesn't have spec mode because it's a mod-only controller for full directional first and 8 scale. We don't need it there. All the new Gen 2 speedos have an easy access port, so no more unplugging the servo lead. If you're familiar with the Generation 1 stuff, you were always unplugging that. Now over time, fatigue that servo lead and end up having to replace it. The Gen 2 RS, RX-8, and RSX all have high voltage VECs. We don't know how good the servos are now, but they're power hungry. So if you've got a high voltage VEC with our 10 scale stuff and of course the 8 scale stuff, you can give it full battery voltage. You can give it 8.4 volts, 7 amps, and it'll power that servo without any issues. You don't need a the little booster cap on your receiver or a glitch buster. You don't need any of that stuff for the Tekin speed controller. All the Gen 2 speed controllers are compatible with our Android app. I get a lot of questions about which Android app will work or which phone can work or which tablet. Pretty much all of them work nowadays, now that we've gotten past ice cream sandwich operating systems. Really all you need to know is that whatever device you're trying to find, it just has to have what's called OTG capabilities. It's called on the go. If that phone or tablet supports that, it'll run the app without an issue. Just find the table for your particular model, and it'll run the app right on your phone or tablet. There is work being done on an iOS solution for those of you who have Apple products. I can't tell you when, I can't tell you what, I can't tell you how we're doing it, but hopefully we'll have something here shortly. I would love to say we're going to have it in time for Christmas, but don't quote me on that, I'll deny it. All the Tekin speed controllers have diagnostic capabilities, so they'll tell you kind of what's going wrong with it, or a motor, or a receiver, or something like this. And I'll go over more of those diagnostic codes here in a little bit with some cool pictures and graphics. So, but it's nice because you can tell, hey, is my receiver not working, or do I have a bad motor, is my battery not working properly, and we can go over that stuff. The other thing that is a nice feature that I find hardly anybody actually realizes it's there. All the Tekin speed controllers that are brushless have a sensor checker in them. So you can actually check your sensor system with the speed controller. And I'll show you guys how to do that in the pits if you want to show how to do it. But it's pretty neat because you can literally plug the sensor harness in, spin the motor by hand, and verify the sensor board is good. 9 times out of 10, a sensor board or a sensor harness goes bad. We can diagnose it. If it's a bad sensor harness, turn the speed controller off, replace the harness, turn it back on. If it's working, hey, you found out it's a sensor harness. If it still doesn't work, then you might have a bad sensor board. You can test that too. And the nice part is you don't have to wire up the ABC wires. You can test your buddy's motor without even hooking up a soldering iron. You just don't have to do it. You just plug in the sensor harness, turn it on your speed controller, and spin that motor by hand, and you can test his sensor board for him, which is nice. The RSX and RX-8 Gen 2 have an optional cooling fan with a user-selectable profile. So you can have it default, which is temperature control. The speed controller will control when that fan goes on and off. It's the default setting, which is what we recommend. But if you're running like a really extreme setup, or you just want the fan to be on all the time, you can turn it on all the time as well. It's in the Hotwire. All the Tekin speed controllers offer a one-touch radio calibration and an onboard interface. So again, you don't have to have a computer, you don't have to have the Android app. You can get to 95% of the settings that you'll need on a racetrack with just the 2 buttons on the speed controller. So it's kind of nice. You don't have to carry around a laptop or a tablet or any of that stuff at all. So on the data logging, here we're going to go over a couple of examples of how the data logging can help you at a racetrack. And that basically your entire goal is to reduce your lap time so you can win a race. So each one of these was a situation I got into a pretty big race. One of them, both of these were at the IIC race, which is the International Race of Champions. It's held in Las Vegas every year. It's a humongous on-road race that grabs guys from all over the world. An amazing race. This thing's a week long. Scotty Ernst hosts this thing. I'm sure everyone knows who that is. And it's an amazing, event to go to. Even if you don't race it, it's badass to just travel to. It's Vegas. It's held in the damn casino. There's, everything you can think of, it's there. Huge pit setup. All the sponsors and vendors are there. It's pretty slick. So we'll go over the first one right now. So here's the first one. This was what's called a Spec GT class, and this class is something that Scotty Ernst developed. This class is a handout Tekin RS Gen 2 system with a 17.5 motor, a Tekin 17.5 that we set up at the factory and lock them up. So every one of these motors, out of the 60 guys in the class, were within 50 RPMs of each other, guaranteed. So they all running basically a handout system that they couldn't touch. They even had to run our wire. They couldn't change anything on the setup at all, nothing. The cool part was, on top of that, they had a gearing ceiling, a limit. They could only go, I think at this time it was a 4.2 final drive. They couldn't go any taller than that. So we weren't really working these systems very hard at all. So every little idiosyncrasy came down to who would win and who would lose. So the first guy, hopefully everyone can see this. If you can't, come ahead and take a little step further. The blue sitting up here is your throttle position. Okay. The yellow one's your battery voltage. The red one's the speedo temp. This orange one's RPM, and this last one, green, is your motor temperature. Okay. Go ahead, hit the next one. And so what we're looking for is this driver is basically having an issue where his lap times weren't as good as everyone else's. One of the first things I look at when I look at this is I start looking at his battery voltage, making sure his radio calibration is done properly, so I see a nice flat spot when he hits the straightaway. And what you can tell is here's a lap, guys. If you look right here to here, the pattern starts to repeat itself. So I can literally start looking at this data logger and find a lap. And once I can do that, I can compare, hey, this is a bad lap, this is a good lap, hey, you're really consistent. Because I'll start matching up these laps with the RPM, battery voltage, speedo temp, and start matching it up and start seeing where problems are. So right out of the gate, I could tell he was getting a good radio calibration because I could see wide open throttle things. What I noticed, though, was compared to some other drivers, the length of that flat spot wasn't as long. So that could tell me that he was scrubbing a lot of corner speed being onto the straightaway because he wasn't carrying the speed. The other thing I noticed was his RPM slope, which is what this is called, is very, very slow. I want to see a very, very steep peak here, which tells me that how hard his car is accelerating. He's taking a long time compared to the other ones I was looking at the time for his car to accelerate. So there were some things that we could change here. Good. My suggestion at that point was for him to drop two pinion gears. This is 64 pitch on-road stuff. So 2 pinions in relationship to what we're used to on off-road, 48 pitch is like half a pinion. So it's not a huge change, but it's still a change nonetheless. So immediately after the next one, we cleared the log, recorded it again. Right away, you can see how much longer this on-throttle bar is. It's a lot longer. It's almost 40% longer. So basically what I told him to do was take a little bit wider on that apex going onto the straightaway, and we're going to lower your gear ratio down a little bit. So by going a little bit wider in that corner, he's able to carry more speed, and the gearing helped. So what we did with the gearing was, now you can see how much steeper this acceleration slope is. What I'm looking for basically in stock, especially in a limited class like this, I want to see a flat spot here. What that flat spot tells me is the car finally topped out somewhere on the straightaway. The cool part is it's so short, basically by the time the car topped out, he was already hitting the brakes and getting ready to turn for the end of the corner. That's what we're looking for. That's optimal gearing. The cool part was, on top of all this, not only did the car find it easier to drive, he dropped 2/10 a lap. 2/10 per lap. This is a 10-second track, guys. 12-second lap. These guys are going to run 40 laps on this track in 5 minutes. That's a lot. 2/10 adds up very quickly. So not only did he pick up the RPMs, his previous high RPM was 16,998. On the new one, he hit 17,390. So he picked up 400 RPMs in a class where every RPM counts. Because he can only go so fast. It's a locked up system. The other thing we noticed is that at the end of his run, his battery voltage is higher. Why is that important? Well, in stock racing, the higher the voltage at the end of the run, the faster your car is going. Because RPMs the RPMs are created by voltage. That's how we do it. So basically, he picked up almost 2/10 of a volt on his battery pack at the end of the run. And all he did was drop 2 pinion gears and change his driving style just a little bit. That's what we could do with a data log. You can't hide from this information. I mean, this helps even in modified. You can see guys who are really consistent with their lap times looking at a data logger. You can see a guy who's scrubbing too much speed in the corner because I can see it. Because I can tell you the lowest RPM he's hitting in that particular corner. So if he's 1,000 RPMs lower than the rest of us and we're all geared pretty much the same, who's scrubbing more speed? The guy with the lowest RPM. So pretty neat stuff. Let's go take a look at the next one. So this is another driver, again, in that max limited final drive class. So you can't always gear to the moon, which is what a lot of stock guys typically do. You just gear as high as you can, or you hear guys saying, I'm going to gear for temperature. That's not the answer. I mean, it works sometimes, but 9 times out of 10, if you're gearing for temperature, you're over geared. I gear for lap times. My whole goal as a racer is to get the smallest amount of lap time I can get on a track, period. I don't care what the motor temperatures are first. If I can get my lap times, motor temperature will fall in line as long as my setup's good. So what we're going to look at here on this one is where we could improve. The problem with this guy in particular was he was off pace. Just right out of the gate off pace. He was way slower than everyone else. And again, he's running a handout system that are all matched within 50 RPMs of each other. So I'm pretty confident it wasn't the system, but this guy was adamant that he had a slow motor. So I said, before we pull out this and swap it out, I want to pick a data log on your car, run it, and then compare it to some stuff after we make a change. So we went ahead and did that. So right out of the gate, what I'm looking for example, is in the circles. So the data logging starts recording as soon as you turn your car on. So if your car's on, the data logger is recording. Right out of the gate, I see his battery voltage is good. It's 8.4 volts. That's what I want to see. Everything else is completely fine. Everything's at ambient temperature. 72 degrees on the speedo, 77 degrees on the motor. It's cold. That's what we're looking for. So go ahead and hit next. So right out of the gate, though, in this particular guy, when he first turns his car on, everyone see this? That's 804. He's already basically discharging his battery. He's not even at 8.4 volts. He's putting a car on the track without a charged pack. ESC temps there, everything else is at ambient. So what's wrong with this? This guy had two of the most gigantic cooling fans on his motor. Okay, we're talking about a limited class. We're barely working these systems at all. But he figured, cooler motor's faster, which in general is true. But in this case, because the motor's barely getting to 120 degrees at the end of the race, the fans aren't doing him any good. Matter of fact, at this point, they're harming him. Those fans, just sitting there running, dropped his battery 0.37 volts before it even turned a lap. So when his car's out there during staging, he's getting ready to run, he just lost 0.4 of a volt just because of the fans are on. So I told him, let's take the fans off completely. His motor tip only got up to 120 degrees, so we don't need the fans to begin with. So let's hit the next slide. So right away, all he did, I even had him leave the fans in the car so it didn't upset his setup, right? Just unplug the fans for me. Sure enough, next time he's hitting the track, 8.41. Battery's fully charged. Basically, at that point, the motor temp only went up 20 degrees. Big deal, 140 degrees, no one cares. Not only that, his RPMs were up higher, and his average lap time went down 0.2 of a lap again, just from cooling fans. Now he wasn't the most consistent driver, but you can't argue with 0.2 of a lap from unplugging a set of fans. That's simple. The best part was, I was right, that was awesome, and he ended up TQing his heat. So all I had him do was unplug some fans, trust me for a minute, and he went out and TQ'd. Kind of hard to argue with. Pretty cool. Any questions about data logging? I know I talk really fast and I apologize for that, but it's just how it goes. Really, cemetery, no questions at all?
I got a question.
Shoot.
So on your temperature setting with the fan,
yeah,
you have the default, which is, can you change that default temperature?
No, it's set it basically on the fans. They'll come on at 140, and they'll shut off at 140. So really, once the speedo starts seeing that it's warming up, it'll kick the fan on. But most of the time, especially with ambient temperatures like where we have here, where it's what 75, 80 degrees is the highest, you don't need a fan at any point.
Okay.
The RX-8s definitely, especially in four-wheel drive short course, they have to have the fan on it. And let me explain that real quick, guys. For those of you that run a four-wheel drive short course truck, that is the worst load in RC racing today. That is the fastest motor and the lowest voltage in RC that we will hand you. So let me explain this for a minute. The higher voltage I can run, the less amp draw I can have. We're giving you a 2S battery pack, and if you're running Tekin stuff, that Pro 4 motor, depending on which variant you have, is anywhere between a 1.5 turn and a 1 turn motor. Single turn. Yeah, it's nasty. That's why your truck goes 40 miles an hour and it weighs 7 pounds. That's why you need the fan. If you ran that setup in an 8-scale buggy with 4S, which I have done for the record, we make an 1850 kV Pro 4 motor for 4S. I can run out there for 12 minutes and never need a fan. And the only thing is, it's the exact same speed, it's just double the voltage. Half the amp draw. So forward drive, short course, run the fans on the RX-8. You might get away without it, put a fan on. We give it to you for a reason. But you'll see like guys like Adam Drake run his forward drive, his 8-scale buggy, electric buggy, no fan. Because the voltage is high. He's not getting it that hot. Your short course runs hotter than his 8-scale buggy, and that's Adam Drake. That's impressive. So the more items you're recording on the data logger, the less amount of time you can record on the data logger. We only have so much memory in the speed controller. I mean, they're small little speed controllers. So I can't go put 16 gigs of music on it and still record the data log. So pay attention to that. So if you're trying to get a 15-minute run, for example, go ahead and kick off a couple things. Throttle position and motor RPM are the biggest memory hogs in that system because they're recording the most data. Battery voltage, speedo temp, motor temp, those are pretty slow. We don't have to, there's not a lot of up and down and change there. So if you're looking to see like how long your battery lasts, or if you're trying to do a battery check, for example, and see if your battery's kind of a piece of crap, turn off the other runs because you don't need them. And I'll go over that a little bit later. To ensure that you're getting the most recent run every time, you need to clear the data logger every time you want to record it. You can do this 2 ways. You can use your Hotwire, you can use your phone app, or what I recommend is using the increment button on the speed controller. It's really, you turn your car on, let it boot up, hold your increment button down until it chimes, and that just clears the entire data log. So that next time when you go set your car on track, you've got a fresh run. And you have to do that manually. The reason why we do that is that when I'm in a big race, if I'm tracking 16 team drivers at a big race like this, I don't want them to accidentally delete it or override it just because they were doing a slipper check or they were saucing tires or something like this. I want the run. So just be aware of that. You can also see how much memory is being used in the controller at any given time. Just hit the increment button 1 time. The more LEDs you see, the more memory is full, like a gas tank. Let's see. Every time the power is cycled on and off, you'll get a new run. So we can record multiple runs on your car. So if you turn your car on, do a slipper check, and turn it off, that's a run. And we can see the slipper check. That way, for example, if you just cleared it, the slipper check, what, 20 seconds, 30 seconds? There's still more memory. You'll just see 2 runs. You'll see your a 20-second run, and then you'll see your 6-minute run in qualifying. So just be aware of that. Not all of the motors on the market right now have a temp sensor. There's some of the Trinity ones, there's some of the Reedy ones, I think some of the Orions don't have it. So if you see a flat line or some really odd set of data on your motor temp in a data logger, that motor probably doesn't have a sensor. They're not required by ROAR. They're not required by IFMAR, but all our motors have it. But if you do see something that says like -72 degrees, yeah, your motor's not that cold. It just doesn't have a sensor. You can also adjust the length of time on the display, the temperature conversion from English to metric if you're overseas. You can also choose whether you're running a 2-pole motor or a 4-pole motor. The RX-8 obviously is defaulted for 4-pole stuff, but on like the RSX, if you're running a Pro 2 motor, click the 4-pole box. That way your RPMs are accurate because we can't actually diagnose which one's going in the car at the time. You can also adjust the resolution. So if you want to just have as much memory and as much data as you possibly can, you can change the sample rate resolution and slow it down. So we don't really do that too much in racing. We want as much resolution as we can. But guys that do like rock crawlers or rock racing, sometimes those guys are out there for 20 minutes. They need to dial back their resolution if they want an entire run. But 20 minutes is a long time to record. You can also save these data logs. You can save these data logs in a folder. Just save them on your desktop, your documents folder, wherever you want to save them. And I do this a lot when I'm traveling with the team because I'll have a folder for each driver and I'll start recording. Here's practice run 1, P2, P3. Here's qual 1, Q1, Q2, Q3. Here's their main. And what's nice is I can open up multiple windows and start comparing. Did that setup help? Did the gearing change help? Where your lap time's at? And you can literally see what changed with the setup. Whatever you're doing, settings or gearing or even changing motor one. We'll see what works better. You only have to have a Hotwire plugged in to look at those data logs. So for example, I'll have customers sometimes having an issue or they're trying to get some gearing help. They can email me that file. I do this all the time for guys, especially back east. They'll email me their stock buggy run and say, dude, I'm looking for a little bit more speed, or I think it's getting too hot. Well, record it and send it to me. So I can actually get that file in an email, open it up on my computer, and I can look at their entire run, which is pretty cool. So if you've got, sharing info or data with other buddies, or you just want to post it somewhere, you can. It's kind of cool. You can display the setup, and you can print it. There's a play button with an adjustable playback speed, so you can do real time. You can do 10 times fast. You can do a lot of things with it. So kind of just sit there and mess with it a little bit. And we've updated this a little bit too. So some of these slides might be outdated, but it should be close enough. So here are the troubleshooting codes. These are really important because this will make you look like a superstar if everyone else doesn't know what they are. So again, if you guys want to get a little closer and see them, I'm sorry I don't have a projector right now, but we'll go over these. And these codes are straight up the same for every brushless speed controller that Tekin makes: RSX, RX8, RS Gen 2, and RS Gen 2 spec. So the first one, these are all normal operation codes right here, guys. This is just on and idling. You'll have the LED number 4, which is the neutral position. It's just lit up. It'll sit there back and forth, cycle to the speed of 10. We are live showing you how hot that speed controller is. The more LEDs when it cycles over, the hotter the speed is. And this is really important because if you're not sure if you need that fan, after you run your car, pick it up right off the track as fast as you can and see how many LEDs are showing. If it's showing 4 LEDs, you don't need a fan. If it's showing 6 or 7 LEDs, put a fan on the car. That's near getting hot. That's a warm speed controller. This one right here, this is where we're all probably familiar with this. This is spec mode. LEDs 3 and 5 flashing. We also have a lock spec mode for big races that require it, like roll races, where 3, 4, and 5 will flash. And the difference between regular spec and lock spec is literally the ability to change it on the fly. When you're lock spec mode, it requires a hot wire to take that out of spec mode. And we did this because guys like Scotty Ernst and Jimmy Babcock asked us to make it to where the speed controller was locked up, no changes. That way they can't change the timing profile on the fly. It's impossible. There's no way to do it. It requires a laptop or an Android device to unlock this thing. This one right here, again, is your temp indication. You'll see this thing grow 2 LEDs, 3 LEDs, 4 LEDs. That's showing you how hot the speed controller is. Again, at idle, the more LEDs you see flash, the hotter that speedo is. You start seeing 7 LEDs on a speed controller, you're getting hot. It's getting ready to thermal that stuff. So make adjustments. This one right here is literally your throttle. So you'll see the throttle ramp up from left to right. So if you want to know for a fact that your radio calibration is good and you want to verify you're getting full throttle to that speed controller, all the LEDs will ramp up and they will flash at the end. So that's full throttle. If we see flashing lights on at the end of it, you're getting full throttle. Same brakes the same way, except the LEDs go from right to left for brake or reverse if you have reversing. Okay. Here's some fault codes, and these are important. If I see the 3 lights on the right-hand side, that's a radio calibration problem. The speedo is seeing a brake setting when it should be seeing neutral. This happens a lot with ready-to-run radios that bump the knobs, guys that choose the wrong model, for example. As far as the speed controller is concerned, it doesn't see neutral where it was originally calibrated. That's all it's asking for. So if guys bump it on the track, or they're just kind of got nervous hands on the track and they're bumping their switches and stuff while they're driving, the next time they turn their car on, it won't arm the speed controller. It's a safety thing. Other speed controllers, for example, if you ever see a guy turn his car on and watch the car just exit and pit, that's because they don't have this feature. If you imagine an 8-scale buggy, for example, with Mod 1 gears, and when you turn that car on and your hand was in that car and it grabbed the gears, and you can only imagine, right? I've seen it. It's not fun. Someone's going to the hospital. So on a Tekin speed controller, if we do not see neutral, we will not arm the motor. It's just going to sit there. The opposite is true of the lights on the left-hand side. That means we're seeing throttle and not seeing neutral. We're not going to arm. All LEDs flashing means we don't have a receiver signal being sent to us. This could be because it got unplugged. This is a bad servo lead. This could be a wrong model selected on your transmitter, and 9 times out of 10, it's not found. That's something else we see a lot. This is a sensor checker. These are the last 3 LEDs cycling on and off when the motor's spun. If the motor's in your car and everything's wired up, you can actually just increase just a little bit of throttle, and you can see these lights flash on and off. And I can go over this in a bit later. LEDs 1, 3, 5 flashing. This is a low voltage fault. So if you plug your car in and you see this, your battery's not charged. It's already below voltage cutoff. If you hit the throttle and then see this code, same problem, voltage cutoff. So we're telling you what's going on and why your car doesn't drive right at the speed controller. The outer 2 lights flashing, this means we don't see a motor that we're programmed for. So for example, on a brushless motor, there's 3 phases, A, B, and C. That's what those wires are for. If we show you this fault, that means we're not seeing 3 phases, we're seeing 2 phases. motor shorted, ABC wires are shorted because the tabs got hit. Someone hit your tabs together. We see that too. Or you have a blown phase, you have a blown motor, or possibly a blown speed controller. The first test in this setup, swap the motor out. 9 times out of 10, that's what it is. After that, you gotta do some more diagnostics, but that's pretty much where we go with it. So that's pretty much the quick how-to on as far as the new speed controllers, diagnostics, and stuff. I do expect everyone to have a lot of questions. So by all means, don't be afraid to ask it, because you're gonna ask a question that like 10 of the people in this room are gonna be thinking of. So let's swap over to that other screen. Scroll down there. No.
Oh.
No. Close that down. No question. Anybody got a question? Nobody. You gotta be kidding. This is hilarious.
I'm working on it.
Working on it? How many of you guys run Tekin or have run it in the past? Okay. What do you guys run? What classes?
Well, I don't have it right now. I got a track power.
Okay, not.
I can't tell you.
What are you running in your car? Okay.
RS 85.
Okay. 2-wheel drive buggy. Okay. I know what he's running because it's an RX. So. What else? Anybody else running Tekin stuff?
I got a 4x4.
So an RX-8? Gen 1 or Gen 2?
No clue yet.
The white or black?
It's Gen 1. So cool. Let's go ahead and
I have a question that you said you were going to cover the stuff. Waiting on that.
yeah, just give me a second. I know there's people watching online.
I wasn't aware of all the lights and so that's I wish people knew the one that says the battery did.
Yeah.
Better than that, bro.
Why can't I turn the questions on? Oh, this is interesting. I can't figure out why the Q&A is not on.
Before you started, there was people already got questions in there.
Mm-hmm.